wagon wheel drills. I come out of swim by, I've done double T. I'm going to start some of these wagon wheel drills. And oftentimes I start those wagon wheel drills while I'm in swim by. And the beginning of wagon wheel mostly is the first one, the wagon wheel lining drill. That's the most typical, most common. On the website, there's a more detailed mini course on wagon wheel lining drills. So take a look at that. That's going to increase your communication at your side. That's that line mechanic stuff. That's that getting a dog to rotate clockwise and counterclockwise, to get comfortable about being pointed to a destination, working on your sending cadence on the word back, recalling your dog, beginning the no-no procedure of recalling your dog to go to a different destination, teaching them what that means and not overreacting to it. Initially, at this point, you're just probably going to do 8 white bumpers, visible bumpers, short grass, roughly 12 yards. I like to put a mat down to keep myself in a designated area. So when I'm working on rotation, 360 heeling, if you're two-sided, you want to be equally comfortable on the right and the left. You want to be able to pull the dog towards you and rotate. If you're on the left, clockwise. If you're on the right, counterclockwise. And then you want to be able to have the dog heel and rotate in the opposite direction. You're going to practice doing that. You're also going to practice the preciseness of that delivery. So when the dog comes in with one of those bumpers, and initially, again, on the typical beginning wagon wheel drills, I point them right back where they just were, throw the bumper out, and then rotate them. So in some ways, that's actually the beginning of your first poison bird, so to speak. Now you're doing a couple, and you're sending on back. You're working on your hand position, not ramming your hand in and sending simultaneously. There's hand comes down. You want to get that just over the tip of the dog's nose, slightly above his line of sight. I want him to see the hand in his peripheral vision. I want him to know it's there, to get comfortable. And the hand comes in, and the dog runs out from a stationary hand. You don't ram it down. You don't chop it. Stationary. Wagon wheel lining drills. Initial one, 8 leg. I'm going to jump back into this when I get just in the tail end of cheating singles, maybe my blinds are becoming a little bit more sophisticated, and I'm going to jump into 2-tier wagon wheel with 8 red bumpers in the gaps. Don't be afraid of that. Done properly, the dogs catch on to that pretty quickly, because now you're going to start to expose them to a little bit of the unknown, a little bit of uncertainty, not to be afraid of it. You're going to move up and teach after a couple mistakes, and you're going to push the envelope of getting the dog to work with you and go to a destination that he's uncertain about. It's going to help you on marks, and the obvious, it's going to help you on blinds. But it's just going to help build that trust between you and your dog. You're going to want to do the wagon wheel casting drill. Robin, if you don't mind, let's jump into the module that you've got some of the photographs. And these are the photographs that are at the bottom of module number 7, the wagon wheel module. That is the beginning of the wagon wheel casting drill. Notice the dog is facing the handler, and you're starting to teach the dog the difference between a straight back, an angle back, and an over, how to turn properly. That's the beginning. And the videos go into good detail about how I start the bumpers, but there's wagon wheel casting drill, because when you start these blinds, your dog's never had an angle back before. So he needs to start to learn what that means. Well, there's our wagon wheel lining drill. Dog's at the side of the handler. You've got the 8-tier wagon wheel. I like to use jumbo bumpers, put a little spray paint or spot so when you put your wagon wheel out, you can get it in the right spot each time. I like to have a mat to keep myself in the center, and I just want to work on what I described, that rotation, clockwise, counterclockwise, sending cadence, delivery mechanics. This is where you're going to start to work on keeping your feet square. The ideal scenario, if you look at the base of that dog's tail to the middle of his shoulder blades to the tip of his nose, everything is in alignment. I like that neutral stance. And I call it neutral because if I'm right at the shoulder, I don't influence the dog away from me or towards me. You notice when the handler steps back, see how the dog's attitude and his head is looking to the right a little bit? That's kind of an influencing towards you. We call that opening the door. Create a window between the dog's head and your body. And when you step from the neutral position back to that position, you're going to draw the dog towards you. But it all starts with establishing a consistent neutral position. In other words, when the dog comes in, he defaults that his shoulder socket is at your knee socket. He doesn't come in and sit ahead of you and want to take charge. And you just have to do this over and over until this is muscle memory. In the instance where you move ahead of the neutral position, the dog's attitude is shifted away from you. On the left, it would be shifting him to the left. On the right, it'd be shifting him to the right. But when you move ahead of neutral, the dog's head will typically cock a little bit away from you. The other thing that'll happen is they'll shift their weight from both feet and lean a little bit on the left leg. At this point, these dogs aren't sophisticated enough to have a 1 degree difference, but you just start to understand the power of influencing, the power of where you stand, and really what it means. All starts with these wagon wheel drills. So we talked about the neutral being that A position. B is that push where you're up ahead of neutral. And if you draw back to the C, you're drawing the dog towards you. So there's a good example of what that looks like. And when you're in that neutral position and you drop that hand down, you don't have to lean over. And it's right over the tip of their nose, above their line of sight. So it's not blocking their view, but they're aware of it. No daylight. I talked a little bit more about my ideal stance. Once again, we're back in that neutral position. I like to have my feet square at this point, my toes pointing it towards the destination, and the dog's spine parallel to where my feet are pointed. Some people end up kind of dropping their left leg back, standing crosswise. I think the better you get into that good stance where your feet are pointed at the destination, the more accurate you'll be able to learn to tell where your dog's looking and where they're pointed. It all starts right here. Here we are back at that wagon wheel casting. Everything else there, I was talking about the lining part, about your neutral position and stance. One of the important things is the beginning of this casting. You're using the same tier of bumpers, but now the dog is sitting on that mat that you were standing next to him, and you're standing a little bit away from him, and you're starting to teach him the difference between a right straight back, a right angle back, a right over, and the same thing on the left side. And as you get deeper into the wagon wheel casting, you work on an angle coming and a straight coming, and they'll become very refined pretty quickly after a couple of weeks of a wagon wheel casting drill. It'll give you a jump start into those early cold blinds and a little bit of an understanding what it means when you give a silent angle back, that it means to change direction laterally.